Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, everyone is talking about a new world order. What does that even mean? What will the new world order look like? Who will control it? What has been touted as a right-wing conspiracy theory for the past few decades is now just loosely falling out of the mouths of global leaders everywhere. But before we get to the various world leaders touting a new world order, including Biden, Putin, Xi Jinping, the World Economic Forum, and others, let's talk about the people claiming it's a big conspiracy theory. The Anti-Defamation League categorizes the phrase New World Order under extremism, terrorism, and bigotry. They define it as, quote, a term used to refer to a right-wing conspiracy theory that became popular among anti-government extremists from the 1990s onwards. New World Order conspiracists believe that a tyrannical socialist one-world conspiracy has already taken over most of the planet and schemes to eliminate the last bastion of freedom, the United States, with the help of collaborators within the government. Through repressive measures, as well as manufactured crises such as terrorist attacks and pandemics, the globalist conspirators seek to eliminate dissent and to disarm Americans so that the New World Order can move in and enslave them. New World Order conspiracists also commonly believe that hundreds of concentration camps have been built in the U.S. ready to house dissenters, that the government will declare martial law, possibly on a pretext such as responding to a terrorist attack, and that the government will engage in mass gun confiscations. That sounds nuts, right? But if we rephrase it with fewer charged words, for example, let's replace tyrannical and socialist with authoritarian, change enslave with control, and swap out putting dissenters into concentration camps with something like silencing them on social media. It suddenly doesn't sound that insane. During the pandemic, many of us lost our freedoms, and in the recent era, we've seen dissenters put in jail, like Julian Assange and various protesters. Now, despite the ADL claiming the idea of a New World Order as a conspiracy theory touted by conspiracy theorists, interestingly, numerous world leaders have been throwing the idea around. If you remember, just a few days ago, Biden was talking about a New World Order forming. Here he is.
You know, we are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway.
Now, immediately, elite media rolled their collective eyes and said, oh, great, his innocent use of a phrase is just fodder for conspiracy theorists. Okay, maybe. But then, just these past few days, the World Government Summit convened in Dubai. It's a summit similar to the World Economic Forum. In fact, the two organizations are closely tied, and the key organizers are also members and young global leaders within the WEF. The two organizations are similar in that they both gather together the rich and the powerful to discuss the world's problems and how to solve them. This one is put on by a group of Emirati government officials. And this year's 2022 summit took on an eye-raising title.
And the title of this session, are we ready for a new world order?
Well, even Klaus Schwab ran a commercial at the summit touting a new world order. Take a look at this.
سرعة التغيير القادمة أكبر بكثير مما نتوقع.
I see a future where the internet is available for free for everyone, and that means the location of power is going to shift. Decentralization of power structures everywhere may be the beginning of that shift in finance, in political power.
We have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation.
Okay, so now we have Joe Biden, Emirati leaders, and Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum all talking about the New World Order forming. What next? Well, it turns out the Chinese and the Russians have been talking about it as well. In fact, the two nations just got together yesterday and declared that they're building a new democratic world order together. Now, I just want to say that as much as I find much of the propaganda spewed by mainstream media false regarding these two countries, one thing is accurate. These are not free nations. They crack down on dissent, jail dissidents. China even controls how many kids you can have. A new world order run by these two sounds a lot like what has been touted by the people labeled conspiracy theorists. Yet here we are. And with China buying out everyone in every industry, it raises concerns as to how much influence they have over the world. I think it's time to pay attention to the conspiracy theorists, especially as Russia and China force the world away from the petrodollar and into the new petro-ruble or petro-yuan. Imagine a new world order under China. Would it be a tyrannical socialist world using repressive measures, eliminating dissent and disarming its citizens? Would there be concentration camps housing dissenters? Doesn't sound so nuts anymore now, does it? And though I do think China and their ability to buy up influence is a problem that we should be addressing, I'd like us to think of another possibility. There's a possibility that a new world order isn't run by any government at all. We've seen transitions from monarchies and dictators to democracies, but maybe the next iteration isn't a government run by the people, but a technocracy instead, or at least run by big corporations in conjunction with big tech. Now, we've seen the power big tech has had on nearly every aspect of our society. They've been able to ban the president of the United States, deplatform and censor news. Bill Gates has an enormous and disproportionate influence on vaccines and healthcare. Twitter and Facebook control narratives. We're all reliant on Amazon, and Jeff Bezos even owns the Washington Post. Is it possible that the next iteration of a world order is run by big tech and not by power-hungry politicians? I'm not sure how it would work exactly, but I think this unknown is maybe what's possibly freaking global leaders out. It's possible these powerful elites are hosting numerous global summits about the future of the world because they're scrambling to hold on to power in an era when so much is slipping away from them to big tech instead. It's just a thought. But clearly one thing we know is things are changing and shifting, and the unknown is frightening. And apparently it's not only frightening to the conspiracy theorists, it's frightening to global world leaders as well. So I think there's really no doubt that things are shifting. We're seeing it happen right now with this war. It's dividing up the East from the West. We've also seen over the last few years the power of big tech. I don't know what this new world order is going to look like. I'll let you guys take a stab at it. I mean, what do you think? Or do you think it's just a big conspiracy theory and everything will be the way it's been, nothing's really going to change?
Well, no, things are definitely changing, and they can change for the worse. And I have a lot of concerns about many of the things you raised. I mean, I'm equally, if not more, concerned about hegemony of China and Russia, them working together. Yeah, I do not want either of those countries to replace the U.S. as the global world power, the global standard. That would result in human rights abuses, free speech abuses, political abuses that are far worse than those occurring under the U.S. I guess and this isn't to disagree with you, because you pointed this out in your radar that it's while there are kernels of truth to many conspiracy theories, what the really intense people who claim the New World Order, what they mean is all of these forces, like there's a man behind the curtain, or there's many men behind the curtain, right? They're all meeting at a secret meeting, not the people behind the political leaders and the corporate executives. They all get together and they all worship Satan, and they're all like having orgies with children, and they decide to like do evil thing. Like that level of it is not true, because as we see, many of these forces are actually at odds. Like we're at odds with China. The true New World Order conspiracy theorists think us and China and like everyone, the people in charge of everything are getting together and high-fiving and that kind of thing. And that part of it is going too far, because a lot of these forces are at odds with each other. But that doesn't mean you're wrong about the dangers of evil forces, or forces that want to restrict our freedoms, seizing opportunities like the pandemic, like terrorism, like other things, to further restrict our freedoms. It's a huge concern.
Yeah, and I think just because there was a particular set of conspiracy theorists who had this satanic kind of notion about this secret global new world order that was going to be formed doesn't mean that as an entire globe we have to retire the phrase new world order. Like, there is a world order, and like Biden, I think he said it fairly well, every 3 or 4 generations you do get a new world order. After 1990, when the Soviet Union collapsed, that created a new world order, because there was no longer this kind of superpower against superpower, with China figuring out what its role was. There was a different world order before World War II. There was a different world order before World War I. There will continue to be different world orders. And when there are new ones, they will be new world orders.
I want a new world order based in universal free expression rights, political freedoms, property rights, accountable, limited democratic government. That would be a great new world order. But that's what we're going to get.
Right, and I don't think we can go retcon the old one and say, well, they predicted concentration camps in the United States, and now we're getting tech censorship, so that's kind of the same. I don't think those are
prisons
comparable things. Well, if they predicted mass incarceration, yes, we definitely have mass incarceration. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I will point out about world orders, past world orders, current world orders, and future world orders, it's all based on who has the money. So if you hold the money and you've got all the riches, then you're the one who gets to be in power. And I think where this becomes more of a conspiring, sort of, I guess, thing going on, not necessarily to the level that, some of the conspiracies that you're talking about. But the fact is that you've got a lot of very powerful governments and people buying up industries or heavily investing. So even though there are some that are at odds, like we see the U.S. government being against the Chinese government, and the governments run very differently. China is much more controlled of its population. That to me is I wouldn't want to live like that. But the fact of the matter is that the Chinese have been able to buy up a ton of influence here in the United States. They own a lot of farmland. They own investments into nearly every single industry we have. And we've seen that play out. We've seen it play out publicly on the stage, such as the NBA, right, where they can't criticize certain things because they're so heavily they're so heavily reliant on China. So that is where it does become there's these actors inside of even our own government or our own ecosystem here in the United States, big money players that are taking money from these others, and they are in a way then kind of colluding to make more money, right? They're all in bed together to just keep enriching themselves, and that is where they do become aligned.
But they're not meeting at the League of Doom headquarters, right, to worship Satan and do all the things.
The Masonic temple.
Maybe not that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know either way. I don't think so, though.
Although one perhaps relevant amendment to that is that who has the guns also matters, and often has mattered more.
Yes.
The Persian Empire, for instance, had all of the money. They were the richest empire on the planet at the time. These barbaric Europeans had all the guns and had better military tactics.
There's a great scene in, I think it's the premiere episode of the second season of Game of Thrones, where Littlefinger is talking with Queen Cersei and says, knowledge is power, because he has all the knowledge. And she says, no, power is power. And she orders her guardsmen to behead him right there. And then she says, no, I changed my mind. No, you don't have to. It's a little demonstration that you have a lot of influence and money and wealth, but I have the legitimate use of violence on my side.
China's going to find out how much their store of treasury bills is worth if it really comes to a conflict
for her. But
that's why also China doesn't arm their population, and then so now you're getting into the territory of why so many of the in the New World Order, the conspiracy theorists by the ADL say a lot of it is to disarm the population because a disarmed population has less
and
power.
Now you're
against the
sounding like one of the right-wing libertarian people. We need an armed citizenry, Kim. That's something I believe.
Hey, listen, I'm a Second Amendment person. That's one thing that where I deviate from the left from is I've always been much more of a Second Amendment person.
U.S. is really slow-walking that disarming of the population thing.
Yeah,
that's true.
We have like 30 guns for every person at this point.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kim, and we'll have more Rising right after this.